So today I'm going to cover a few bits and pieces about the allotment and what I'm planning to do over the next season. So what I found is really important with any allotment or piece of land that you are growing on is just observing it. That first year is just learning what's happy, what's not, how are the fertility conditions, and what you need to do to modify that. It's important to kind of see where and how the seasons affect it, and where the pest pressures are. So firstly, for me this year, the fruit has been fantastic. I had a great season of fruit from spring all the way through to about mid-June, and then it tapered out. And now, as we've gone into July, it's been rather lacking. So there's a little gap there that I'm going to need to find some fruits to fill from kind of mid-July onwards. It looks like the autumn raspberries are going to start flowering and coming into crop soon, which will be great. The second bit is that I've got lots of young fruit trees. So I've got a gumi berry just here. I've got some mulberries here and here. I've got a Chilean guava. So there's lots of other fruit that will be coming on. I've planted them throughout the allotment. I like to make most of the allotment fruit because that's where I enjoy eating and growing the most. So these will start adapting and changing how the allotment feels. That being said, there's a few other things I want to put in. We've got this fantastic wall that runs down the whole length of the allotment, and I've got lots of vining crops along it at the moment, and it's proven to be a really useful resource. Something I've really struggled with in the past is vines. The homemade trellises haven't done great, but this year I'm looking to bring in some kiwi fruit. Is one of the big ones I want to try and get in, some hardy kiwi, some more honeyberries. I want to move in and see if we can get a better crop here. They've never been particularly well looked after in the allotment. The birds always get to them, and just try and get some other crops up against the wall. One of the big things that has been a real problem in this allotment has been slug pressure. They haven't really affected the larger crops, but the young seedlings, it's been really hard to get any in-ground direct sown seedlings past a couple of days old. I haven't really done anything about it, and because this allotment, it wasn't neglected, but it wasn't at its best when I'd taken it over. They have kind of become a bit rampant. I think the wall doesn't help. I think that's one of the downsides. It gives them a lot of places to hide in, and same with the raspberry patches. So I'm going to be chopping those right back as well to hopefully manage that. What I'm planning to do is put some beer traps out. I'm looking into diatomaceous earth. I don't know if I'm saying that right. And I'm also looking into the nematodes that you can spray around. That'll all be stuff I look to do in spring. However, in this year, it doesn't make a lot of sense as we're kind of closing out the summer.
So now I'm going to give a quick tour of the allotment.
So here is the rhubarb. It's done fantastic with the rain. It's been a really good year for rhubarb. I've just actually taken a harvest, so this is after a harvest. Needed to make some blackberry and rhubarb crumble. So yeah, that's doing really, really well. So down in here, underneath this leaf, is where the wine cap mushrooms were put, and I don't know if you can see, but there's quite a bit of mycelium that's starting to develop. I can see the whiteness, so that seems to be doing really, really well for this spot. This is the Jerusalem artichoke. I haven't done anything with it. It's grown and it's looking really healthy. Hopefully get a really good crop. It'll be the first time I've ever grown it. So we had a crop of peas in here that did okay, but they were really, really pestered by the slugs, and they never really came to fruition. I had some carrots planted here initially, and I've tried carrots in the allotment 3 or 4 times, and because I'm direct sowing, I just can't get them to germinate before the slugs eat them. As we come over, I'm starting to get our first little cucumbers. I had a little one yesterday. It was a bit slug eaten. It wasn't quite ripe, but as you can see, the stem's quite down here. It needs some weeding, but it's just been munched all the way up. And this stem was the original stem. It's just been absolutely munched. So the slugs have really put a lot of pressure on. Here is the strawberry patch. The strawberry patch did okay. I think the strawberries weren't the best because of the heat. It was almost like they were cooked when they were in flower. I'm hoping we get another late bloom. My other allotment has started to have its second bloom, and I hope these ones will as well. Here is the sweet corn. The sweet corn is doing brilliantly. It's 6 foot plus. I'm hoping to get a really good crop. On the other side of it, it's not sweet corn. It's not doing quite as well. These smaller plants are just corn, but they were planted maybe about 3-4 weeks later. One of the things that's grown this year for me is this, which is sweet potato, and it's absolutely massive. It's going on in all the different directions. Previously, I tend to just never do anything. It just tends to get a bit unhappy. This raspberry patch is the summer raspberry patch. It looks really sorry for itself. It didn't produce the most fruit, so I'm thinking I'm going to dig it out and replant, fertilise, and see what happens. As we come round, we have the pumpkin patch. It's died off. This branch got snapped off. I buried it. I don't know if you can see just in here. So I'm hoping it's going to reroot and take. It hasn't completely died off yet. So who knows? We may not save that bit, but it's starting to grow all the way along into the open space, which is what I've planned for it. Yeah, it's doing generally really well. This bush here has been incredible. It's a cross between a gooseberry and a blackcurrant. I think it's a boysenberry. I can never remember the name of it, but it's been incredible. I literally for about 6 weeks just came down, just ate as much as I could, and there was still more every day to do that. So I'm really pleased with this. I'm going to give this a bit of TLC. This is the second patch of wood chip I put in for the wine cap mushrooms. Not seeing as much of a kind of activity here, but you can never know with these sorts of things. So we'll just have to. There we go. There's a bit of mycelium. So we'll have to see what's happening there and what comes up. And this top end of the allotment hasn't really been looked after. I've kind of negated and neglected to just it as general. It has this again. I can never remember the name. It's a cross between a blackberry and a raspberry, which produced loads of fruit. Again, really lovely, which I harvest lots. But just as a general basis, was really covered in weeds and was most really the least looked after. And I've had, this is charred, but you can see just in terms of facility, this is the other the mulberry, and you can see that it's getting some slug pressure there. But even if you look at this tomato, it's tiny. If you compare it, these were planted at the same time, and the fertility up this end just doesn't seem to be at the same level. So this plant here is a goomy berry. It's looking a little bit yellowed on the leaves, and I'm not sure what's causing it. I'm giving it somewhat regular feeds, and I've just put this mulch around it. And my Chilean guava, which is here, is looking very unhappy for itself as well. This has been in a pot for a few years, and over the winter we had a very cold and wet winter. It really didn't like being in that pot, so I planted it out, and it just hasn't really started to bounce back. But I'm hoping that it will. This is the only courgette. I planted about 10 courgettes that came through, and this was actually from a friend from work. She had a few left over, and I'm getting my first courgettes coming through, which is fantastic. The tomatoes are doing brilliantly. They're starting to grow. We've got a lot of fruit starting to form. One of the things I tend to do with tomatoes, which is a little bit controversial, is just let it run wild, let them do what they want to do. I know people like to stake them, but I don't have the patience for it. And I found that doing it this way, I tend to get a really good crop. It tends to root in lots of different places, a bit like a pumpkin. Each place the branch touches the floor at a root, which feeds in more. The only problem with this is it can take longer for the fruit to develop. So if we have a really wet summer like we are now, there's a real risk of the blight catching it before I get a chance to harvest anything. These are my mulberries, which are starting to grow really nicely. Interestingly, the mulberries keep going off to the side. It's the same with that one, and I have another one up at the top of the allotment. They never seem to grow upwards, and I don't know if that's the thing for mulberries or it's just something that these particular plants are doing. One of the things I've had a really good success with is beetroots. Had some really good beetroots. I'm just going to plant some more today. I took a harvest the other day, so it's looking a little bit bare. Yes. This is the red currant. It's looking a little bit yellow, but it looked really lush at the start of the season. I have had absolutely thousands of currants on it. I've never seen a bush so heavily laden, and they were really, really tasty as well.